Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Sport on YouTube for the Pole Position Podcast Bahrain Grand Prix preview. We're on to the second race of the F1 calendar, and I'm used to the days when Malaysia came second or maybe China over the last few years, but no, we go straight into Bahrain, and of course it is the first night race of the season along with Singapore, and if you really count Abu Dhabi as that's half and half. The moonlight comes at some point in that race, maybe an hour late into the race. I don't know. No one. I don't.
Who cares about Abu Dhabi anyway?
It's a poor track. I hope you leave very soon. Anyway, Jack Price, of course. At the moment, Lewis Hamilton is second to Sebastian Vettel. Sebastian Vettel won in Bahrain last year. Hamilton was second that year, and Valtteri Bottas was third. I can't believe it's been 12 months since the last race. I remember it quite well. It goes so quick. Vettel is apparently the favourite because they reckon the circuit is perfect for Ferrari.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, like you said, it'll be definitely great to see Bahrain back again. We love the night races. We specifically like them for being able to see the driver. However, that's going to be quite difficult this year with the Halo device. It's something you brought up earlier in the podcast, is the fact that, we now struggle to see the drivers, with the device there. So, that might be more disappointing watching the race. But overall, I think it's definitely going to be one for Ferrari. They look good. They look strong, obviously showing in Australia with a bit of luck, here and there, that they do have a strong car this year. And also the fact that Kimi Raikkonen's looking strong as well as Sebastian Vettel, with both drivers looking good. Obviously they're looking confident for the race, yeah.
I mean, surely it's all mind games as well with Lewis Hamilton and Vettel straight away saying, Bahrain and Ferrari could go, can't wait, we're going to get 2 wins out of 2 here. But no matter what, they had this start last season where they won in Australia and they won in Bahrain. I can't remember the other races around that, but Vettel won both of them, and he was leading the championship all the way until the summer break. So we keep saying this, and we'll probably always say this on the Pole Position podcast, but it's a long season. It's 21 races.
Yeah, of course. The fact that Lewis Hamilton, I think, is going to use this as maybe as an advantage to say, Ferrari are going in as the stronger team, and he's going to put the pressure on Ferrari, and I think Mercedes will do that as well, and just say, Ferrari are probably going to be best on this track, because then it makes them feel, okay, we can just go out and do as well as we can. And, I don't discount, obviously, all the people going on about Ferrari, but don't discount Mercedes. You can't. They've won 4 world championships in a row. So I think they're just going to be as strong as Ferrari, but I think the more pressure put on the Scuderia team, the easier it's going to be for them.
And do you think mentality-wise, when you look at Lewis Hamilton, we were talking about it after the Australian race, where it took him forever to get out of the car, not because of the halo, but because of the fact that he felt that the race was stolen from him because of that whole pit stop malarkey. Do you feel mentality-wise he knows he needs to win this race just so he gets that first win for the season?
I think every driver wants their first win as quickly as possible. They want to get it under their belt. But I don't think he'll be too disheartened with it. I think over these last 2 weeks, probably the team have got together and said, right, this was the issue. We found it. Let's move on, because ultimately they had a fast car because he got himself on pole with a cracking lap. So It's not like the car isn't there. And I think the fact that he's still got a sense of humour, posting a picture that he did yesterday for April Fool's, saying that he's moving to MotoGP in 2018. So I don't think he's feeling down. I think he's ready for this weekend, and I think for him, he wants to get the win. And I think actually for the season, it would be great for Mercedes to get the win as well. So they're sort of fighting already, as it were.
Lewis, stick to 4 wheels. Stick to 4. But Valentino Rossi's good at 2, not 4. But anyway, speaking of Mercedes as well, Valtteri Bottas got 3rd. We've got to talk about him because he had a poor Australia race. Obviously, qualifying really started the whole failure of the weekend with that crash. He's got to look at it as well, because we'll keep talking about it throughout the season. These races could be his last for Mercedes, and every moment counts for him now because he's under pressure, not Lewis.
Yeah, well, he won 3 races last year,
which is good.
Which was great. I think the first one was in Russia, don't say that's not a great thing for a first season, but I said, is it 2 or 3 podcasts ago, that I see him possibly winning the World Championship? That was a long shot. And after even after one race, I'm looking at it thinking, was that right? But I still think that he has the potential to prove his worth. And yes, he's only got a year left, and he needs to prove that, because otherwise, with other drivers running out of contracts on the grid, it'll be easy for Mercedes to pick somebody else if Bottas isn't performing. But Valtteri Bottas has the potential, and I think for him, he needs to get off to a good start. And getting third last year in Bahrain, he knows the circuit well, and let's hope for his sake and for Mercedes, he can pull out maybe even a victory.
And then the other Finnish man, Mr. Kimi Räikkönen.
Yeah.
I mean, he was all chilled out after the Australia race, but come Bahrain, is he the number 2 driver? Are we going to agree with this now that he is the number two driver for sure? It's hard to say, because he's still a strong driver. He's very consistent at the top, isn't he? And that's probably without him having to really make the effort, as long as he just brings the car home and does the laps in a clean way. Is he the man that could still look for a second world championship? Because I keep saying this now, anyone can win this world championship if they start fighting for it now, instead of later on in the season when the silver arrows and the red Ferraris are miles ahead.
Yeah, well, we know the two out of the main teams, we know that Red Bull don't have a first team driver, because them two are both as strong as each other.
They're like two little kids in a pram. They just keep falling out.
They're just fighting over one toy. Yeah. Mercedes, I think, do have a number 1 driver. Obviously, Lewis Hamilton. I think.
I thought it was Bottas.
That sounded like Kimi Räikkönen then, didn't it? But,
same nationality.
Yeah. But yeah, I think Hamilton is definitely number 1 in that team. But I think Vettel's been number 1 for the last 2 years, because Kimi Räikkönen just sort of dropped off the boil. We didn't really see much of him. He'd come out maybe for one race, and then for another 3 you wouldn't see him, and he'd get the points that Ferrari wanted. But other than that, you wouldn't really notice he was there. But watching that first race, and in qualifying and practice as well, he looked like he was more interested than he had been for a couple of seasons.
I thought that as
well.
He
looked like he, actually, I can. Maybe it's joining Instagram. Maybe all them extra fans that have been,
probably realised he's got friends.
Yeah, well, he's like, wow, I can actually do something this year. But he just looked more on it, and he actually, beating Vettel in qualifying as well is a a good thing for him, and getting on the podium is great as well. And I would like to see Kimi Räikkönen fight for that number 1 driver spot, and maybe even fight for the championship, because he's got probably the biggest fan base in F1, as well as maybe Fernando Alonso and even Max Verstappen, because there's always loads of Dutch fans everywhere you go. So I think Kimi Räikkönen is up there with one of the most popular drivers. So if he can fight for the championship, the amount of more people that are going to watch the sport, which is ultimately as fans what we want as well, will be massive. So I think I'd love to see Kimi Räikkönen get back up there. That would be great, yeah.
I'd imagine in qualifying in Australia, when Kimi heard P2, he was just like, yeah. And then just, Hamilton P1, he'd be like, can you imagine Vettel going up to him when he gets out the car and just going, man, why are you ahead of me?
Yeah, I'm number 1. I'm number 1.
Yeah,
he just puts his sunglasses on and ignores everybody.
Yeah, the moment those shades go on, I think even the media interviews who get told interview him, he's wearing his shades. Come on, I'm not going to get a word out of him. Well, at least predict his quotes. What? Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, enough of blah. We move on to another bra moment. Well, not really, but it sounds like I'm saying bra.
Bra.
I'm not. It just sounds like it.
Maybe Kimi Räikkönen saying bra.
Maybe. Anyway, we won't accuse him of anything. We don't want to get sued here on Let's Talk Sport. Let's talk about Haas, because a lot of people are going to wonder how they're going to do this weekend, because Steiner, the boss, has actually has said that he's expecting them to prevent the mistakes they made in Australia, which was, of course, not getting one of the tyres on properly on both cars within 2 laps, and they both went out after they were 4th and 5th in the race. So, obviously, he says, no, they shouldn't happen again, which is obvious. We know that, because obviously it's in any job, the whole point is to get over the problem and to solve it. Surely, I feel like not even just the drivers like Vettel, Hamilton and Raikkonen and all that are under pressure, but surely the mechanics and the engineers at Haas this weekend are going to feel quite pressured as well, because I read an article the other day that they're not going to get fired, the people that were responsible for those mistakes, but if it happens twice in a row and they have good starts in those races, you start to wonder, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, we know from seeing documentaries about the sport, if you're an F1 fan and you see a documentary, watch it, because you see how well the mechanics train over the winter and how hard they train. They're as fit as the drivers are. Yeah. It's an incredible job that they do. So I think that it's right that you don't fire them. I can't believe that that's even been sort of considered, but the fact that it was maybe just a wheel gun failure that's cost them the team. The car itself looks a really good car. The fact that the positions that they were in the race. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. I just think that we talked about it last week. Is that a loss of points? For sure, yeah, it is. But it's best to get it out of the way in the first race, get that problem out of the way. Make sure it doesn't happen again. And then, try and continue for the rest of the year, because ultimately they have a good car. It's not like it's a rubbish car like, the Alfa Romeo, sorry, Sauber. But if they were up there and they lost out, that would be crucial. But I think for Haas, the fact that I think that they can still get up there and fight for high points, if they just fix that problem that they had with the wheel gun, then there shouldn't be an issue. They should be, easily fighting for that top four, because we keep talking about it, but that top four actually could be as important as the championship battle itself, because there's so many more teams fighting for that.
Well, hopefully McLaren, Renault, if you really want to call them that.
Yeah.
If they could do well again, but
they were out twice last year, were they, in Bahrain?
Yeah, they were Bahrain. Van Dorn didn't even start. we looked at the list, because I remember Alonso retiring in that race. I couldn't remember which part of the race. It was at the very end, actually. So he could have... It didn't matter. He was 13th or something like that. So he wouldn't have... There were no points. Do you remember there was times even when he'd park the car and just go, there's no point me being out there.
Why am I even bothering?
Yeah, if the engine blows up, that's more to the rule book, isn't it? When there's no point.
That's actually an issue this year, and I haven't actually discussed it, but the fact that now they've only got 3 engines... And you're driving around in 13th or 14th, or even far back if no one else retires. Is there any point in continuing? And do you just save the engine? Because that's going to hurt, obviously, supporters watching the races. But ultimately, if you're a team and you're sitting in 18th and you're not going anywhere, you've only got 3 engines throughout the season. Do you just go, well, we're just going to waste engine power and possible reliability? Do we just bring the car in and save it?
Do you think that's all down to which team it is, though? Because teams like Red Bull are never expected to be in that area at all in a race. But if it's, let's be honest, a team like Sauber, it's kind of realistic that they're there, though. So surely they should just continue racing, even if they're... I'm not sure.
Yeah, but I just thought it was interesting because...
Actually, a good point as well is the sponsors.
Yeah.
They pay for that car to be seen by millions of viewers around the world and at the track. And those companies are there on race weekends, corporate, because you take all the seats. Football matches,
all the best
maybe.
Ones, yeah.
All the best ones. And they don't even watch. They just drink champagne and just think that they actually know F1. It's racing, not horse racing. And I've noticed, surely that's important as well, that they've got to carry on because of the sponsors. At the end of the day, they're paying for a project, which they've been promised will achieve the aims that they've mentioned to them, but it's also to get a company known.
Yeah, that's a great point. The fact that a lot of companies pay a lot of money to get these on the car, but it's just like now with the FIA stupidly deciding that only 3 engines is going to be the way. With some of the lower cars, say Williams for example, the fact that in some races they're going to be nowhere. With the fact that their downforce on their car isn't going to be as great as other. Yeah. At some point they're going to be like maybe in 16th, 17th, and it's like with only 3 engines left halfway through the season, is it worth continuing? Do we just save the engine? And it's wrong that we should even be discussing this. The FIA shouldn't even have a ban on, a fine on engines. It just should be, 7 or something. It should be easy. The people should just go, we need a new engine. It's like, okay. There shouldn't be any sort of barrier with it because, the drivers instantly get a penalty and they end up halfway down the grid and it's just stupid.
No,
Which one?
Doesn't make sense.
Who is it that's already got an engine penalty? Is it like Gasly or something for Toro Rosso?
Oh, because was it when he had to retire and the engine blew up, did it?
Yeah, that's an engine gone already and it's just like,
he's
only got 2 left.
And there's 20 races.
It doesn't make any sense. FIA, please.
I know, and on average for Toro Rosso this season, they lose 1 engine per race. So... they might need 21 engines if it can.
That's not good, is it?
No. Did you watch Honda last season, Toro Rosso? It wasn't very good.
Honda's looking going, God, we need 20 more engines. How are we going to do that?
Scrapyard. Scrap heap challenge.
McLaren, can we borrow some of the old parts that we had from last year? We're going to need them back.
I think they should do, because Channel 4, which is in the UK, if you're wondering, they broadcast Formula 1. They used to broadcast Scrap Heap Challenge. Maybe they should do a special for... here we have is the Toro Rosso team, and today Pierre Gasly is going to get his hands dirty by looking through the old Honda Scrap Challenge.
It's just
Scrap
terrible.
Yard.
It's terrible. I
think that should be a thing. I think we should pitch that to Channel 4. Could work. Anyway, let's look at the F1 gossip. Now, I think this should be a new feature because these I mean, rumours are hilarious. Whether it's football, F1, even horse racing. I don't know if there is, of who's going to win a race, maybe. But some of the rumours that come out, you just think they've clearly written it just to get viewers, which is called fake news, Donald Trump. Oh, yeah, you know that. Anyway, the first one we got to talk about is actually Sebastian Vettel saying that he didn't understand why the FIA had to ban the grid girls. Now, we haven't done the pole position podcast until recently, and obviously it was a couple of months ago since the grid girls was banned from F1. What do you think about this whole thing? Because I personally had no problems with it. I thought it was always a tradition in F1 that every car, when they're getting ready for the race, had a grid girl at the front of each car to represent the country, the number of the car, and if anything, the clothes that they would be given to wear that was cultural to the country that they're in, whether it's Azerbaijan or Abu Dhabi, etc. But I just feel like that was not really a problem in F1. You know, in terms of if Liberty Media are going to change things, surely that was the last thing to change.
Yeah, it's a very difficult subject to talk about because you say one thing and people say, well, why aren't you saying the other thing? You know, it's very much a very difficult topic to talk about. But I agree with you on the fact that there's so many more changes, obvious changes that you would make. And in the last race of the season or during winter testing, they scrapped the logo and brought in another one.
Yeah.
And they scrapped grid girls. And I agree with the point that there's so much other things that probably needed changing before that. But in terms of grid girls, you know, I accept that it was maybe something that they not had to do, but they saw an opportunity to maybe change it. I didn't have a problem with it. Maybe other people did. But like you said, I agree that all the grid girls were there because they wanted to be there.
Yeah.
All the grid girls were there and they accepted the clothes. Everything was above board. They never had any hassle. The last grid girls for like 4 years and whatever have said that, you know, it's all above board and they feel a part of the thing. You know, they do the sponsorship parties as well. You know, they're part of the whole weekend. So I didn't see the problem with it personally. You know, there's still women drivers out there and we want to try and get women drivers into the sport and that, you know, do really well for themselves. But, you know, I didn't see the problem with having grid girls on there. But I do quite like the idea of the kids coming in. I think if you're going to change it, at least give it a different spin. And I actually quite like the idea. And I didn't have a problem with the grid girls, but I don't have a problem with the grid kids as well because they're what the FIA said when they brought it in was it's going to be kids that are in the lower leagues of motorsport, and it gives them the chance to see their idols, to see F1, to see the sport. And I like that. And I think that that's just, you know, a good way of maybe. I thought they were getting a lot of you know, a lot of flack for what they did with the grid girls, you know, cutting them, but I think that they tried to get a positive outcome from it with the good kids, and I think that, you know, that's not a bad idea. I saw them in Australia, and all of them were smiling, and all of them were happy, and you know that's what you want. You want them to see their heroes and inspire to be, you know, better than them, I suppose.
And in a way, you look at other sports, and that's what it's all about. You have in football, you have the ball kids. You know, they pretty much sit on the side of the pitch to pick up the ball when it comes nearby them, and that's straight away a big moment for them watching footballers that they watch week in, week out on the TV, and then they're there in the flesh playing right next to them. And then there's tennis as well, where ball boys and ball girls, a lot of them are trying to become tennis professionals, but obviously youth as well. So, yeah, I agree. I think it does work for F1, and you don't know where else you could do it, really, could you? Of getting that inspiration for those kids to get a trip to Monaco. I mean, if you can afford it, those kids out there, then you're clearly doing very, very well for yourself at the age of 14. But yeah, it's definitely a big inspiration. But all I would say is that I felt sorry for the models because there's a lot of arguing and debates and all that on the radio and on TV shows where they would have a journalist on who would disagree with women being able to model at darts and the F1. And then obviously the models would say, we've been fine, they've never mistreated us or anything, it's our job. And that's where I look at it. It was their professional jobs, and it was one of their biggest gigs probably of the year. So we'll move on from that. But yes, I think if you are going to replace the girls, the ball kids worked. Not ball kids, I'm getting mixed up with
Grid kids,
football.
yeah.
Grid kids. Apologies there. Anyway, we'll move on to another one. And what do you think about this? The Red Bull driver, Daniel Ricciardo, believes the width of today's F1 cars being, well, let's just say the overtaking is a lot more difficult. Because they do. Because even in that first race, you could just tell, couldn't you, how wide they were?
Yeah, it's definitely an issue. But I think it's more of an issue for tracks that aren't proper racetracks. So you look at Albert Park, you look at Monaco last year, was just unbelievably difficult. It's bad enough as it is, but it just looks like you're following them all around.
They're so wide now; they'll get stuck on the track, and they won't even be able to move.
The corners are so tight in Monaco, and I even thought to an extent Japan was pretty difficult because even though that's a proper racetrack, it's a very narrow racetrack. But you look at the likes of Bahrain, China, they're wide racetracks, even Silverstone to an extent. So I think they're okay. There's not a problem with that. But when you get to the smaller tracks and the tracks that aren't actually made for that, Azerbaijan was another one. Unless it's on the straights going around the corner, especially the one going uphill. That you can't overtake anyway. But it's just really difficult. So I agree with Daniel Ricciardo on some sense with the fact that if you've got a small racetrack, it's more difficult. But with the wide tracks like Bahrain and China, they should still be able to overtake. And that's an issue. I don't mind the cars being that wide, and I don't mind the way that they look and all that sort of thing. That's not a problem. But with it being a motorsport thing, you want overtakes, you want that. That's what you sort of come to watch F1 for, because qualifying's great, but more people come to watch the race. The more overtakes, the better. But we saw more in Australia than we did in 2017 in the last race. But you still want more. So hopefully, with Bahrain being a decent sized track and that. Let's hope that there's more overtakes in that, because that's what F1 wants. We want loads of fighting going on, basically.
Unless you want to watch boxing or wrestling, WWE is great, £10 a month.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's that famous saying, which is Rome is not built overnight, and I know with Liberty taking over F1 from Bernie Ecclestone, it's not going to be overnight. All these changes, but I'm not seeing anything. I'm not seeing any progress. To me, that's exciting me at the moment. The logo is okay. I'm not fussed. A logo's a logo. You just got to look at it as a symbol to represent the sport.
Have you seen they do the new intros and all that now?
My God, the theme is like typical American, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't mind it, but I did like the old theme. That was pretty cool. But yeah, I watched it and I was like, okay. They're making minor changes, but there isn't any.
They're changing stuff that does not matter.
No, they are changing things that you think, okay, what was wrong with the previous model?
Exactly. But okay, FIA have to be in there because of the rules as well. But this whole thing of the cars being wider, why? and as you say, the free engines, how is that helping anybody out?
No.
If you tell me Mercedes can go through the whole year with just 3 engines per car.
No one's going
to. They couldn't do it with 5 last year.
Do you know what F1's going to look like in the future? Them drag races where they have the really small front wheels and the really massive back wheels? Yeah. That's what F1's going to be like soon. It's just going to be completely different. It's going
better order some tractors then.
Pure American. They're going to have like Stetson hats and cowboy boots. And
then they'll say it's 2 drivers per race just going down the road. It's like, why is there 20 of us here? Oh, no, you're coming next weekend, you two. Then the weekend,
They're just going to change it into NASCAR. It's going to be NASCAR 2.0. Sorry, America, that we're that we're saying this.
American
no
motorsport sucks.
We've got no. I was going to say I've got no problem, but
that's my problem with F1 at the moment. I'm not seeing anything that's exciting me. I'm just speaking as a fan. Because this is a fan podcast, so we express our views, but I can't see anything. I just don't understand, because F1 has been boring since 2013. Let's be honest.
Well, to be fair, when Red Bull were winning, it was quite boring
it was
as well.
Dreadful, wasn't it? 2012 was okay, and 2010, but yeah, 2011 and 2013. Then after that, I think it's just been dominant from Mercedes or Red Bull. But that's my problem with F1. You'd think in all this time there'd be a plan in place at a certain point that it'll all change, so that's different. Sadly, it's all about the money for each team now. If you've got the money, you can make the car the best on the grid.
Well, that's the problem. Bernie Ecclestone for many years loved Ferrari.
Bernie Ecclestone left F1 at the right time, I think. I think he's left something that's dying.
Yeah, but he loved Ferrari. His number one team was Ferrari. So whatever Ferrari wanted, Bernie Ecclestone gave him no matter what.
Yeah, I remember that
easily.
Early noughties will tell you that.
But yeah, Liberty Media need to still make changes, and they are making changes. But like you said, they're ones that you think, why? Introduce them. I guess introducing them at the new season's great, but a few years down the line, you put a new logo in or something. It doesn't have to be now. It didn't need to be done. I mean, the only good thing is at least they didn't bring back knockout qualifying.
Oh my God!
Do you remember that? They only happened for Australia, and people just went, "What the hell's going on?"
What was that? Yeah, that was terrible.
Because the drivers couldn't even get out before they were knocked out. It was like, "Oh, I'm out already."
Wasn't that like the first race of last season or the season before? I can't remember which one. It doesn't matter. A couple
of years ago, wasn't it, I think.
Yeah.
But it was just like, this is terrible. I don't think it was one race it lasted because it was so bad.
And then 2014, the last race was double points, which didn't really do anything at all. It just made Hamilton have a bigger gap over Rosberg, and you forgot it was the last race that decided the whole thing.
So rubbish.
Oh, it's terrible. I mean, I positively though, Liberty Media are thinking about the fans in terms of social media, YouTube, Instagram, everything like that, because that is good. Yeah. The YouTube channel.
I want to see the drivers' press conferences more as well. Yeah. We saw a lot of that last year, and although some of the drivers weren't happy that it was being sort of published, because they think it's, it should be something that's, closed doors and they need to discuss things on track.
Yeah.
But I also think that for years, F1 had been very much a closed set. You only saw the race and that was it. Anything else the TV companies could get with quick interviews or something, that was all you got. Whereas Liberty Media are, like you said, trying to do as much possible for fans, and that's great. And I want to see more of the drivers in the press conferences and more interviews and and more stories, because that's what you want. You want to be interested in F1 for the 2 weeks between races. You want videos going out or stuff going out between the 2 weeks, because you don't want to be thinking F1, 2 weeks of nothing. F1.
Yeah, exactly.
You want F1, F1.
Yeah,
and then the race. And, they're trying to do that. So, they are bringing in a lot of positives, but there are some that you just think, no.
I wouldn't recommend it. Quickly, we'll just talk about Haas again, because obviously they nearly had a very good weekend. I keep thinking they did well in Australia, but no, we should put Titanic music over that footage. I've been meaning to do that. But obviously the race director of F1, Charlie Whiting, who is, of course, when you mention the drivers' press conferences, is always on Hamilton's team. Yeah. He says that he has no concern over the legality. Legality? How'd you say it?
Yeah, legality. Is it legality?
Is it legality? Yeah,
graduates, ladies and gentlemen.
Graduates, yeah. I've clearly read a book. Apparently, he's worried about no, he's not. He's got no concern over the legality of the 2018 car off Haas. I mean, why is this a thing? This whole thing of, because Haas is part of Ferrari, they're going to help Ferrari win the whole thing.
Which is stupid, isn't it? Because Force India is with Mercedes, Williams are with Mercedes. Yeah. So ultimately, are Williams going to give Mercedes the championship? Are they going to disappear? Or Force India going to go, our car's broken down? Lewis Hamilton wave through? No, that's not going to happen.
No.
Haas didn't do that. I can't understand why people think they would do it on purpose. They really wanted them points.
Exactly.
So why would you go, oh no, Ferrari won it? Let's just...
But even so, they were ahead of Haas anyway. So
I don't understand why that's actually becoming a thing. It shouldn't be a thing. Haas are their own team. Yeah, they're buying parts from Ferrari, but they're not actually part of Ferrari. They're just buying things from them. Their whole factory is their own team. They've all got their own mechanics. They got their own people that are back in the factory doing all the software. Everything's from them in America. So. they might buy a few parts from Ferrari, but that doesn't make them a Ferrari team.
And the only relationships we know widely is America and Italy's relationships is normally the pizzas that are provided to America, and of course Italian restaurants. And let's not forget the Godfather films or any mafias are American Italians from New York.
Yeah.
So how is that anything to do with cars? Ridiculous. Conspiracy right there for you. Anyway, I think that is pretty much it. Before we go, we'll get the top 3 predictions.
Yeah.
Who are your top 3 for Bahrain this weekend?
Wow, that's just been thrown at me.
Literally thrown at you.
Yeah, that's really difficult. I think Lewis Hamilton will probably win in Bahrain.
All right.
I think Vettel will come second, and I think Bottas will come third. But I do think Kimi Raikkonen will be close because we've already discussed it, and I'd like to see Fernando Alonso back up there as well.
Yes. What, retired?
No.
Oh.
No. And as long as Stoffel starts, that's already a bonus from last year. So I'm going to go Hamilton, Vettel, and Bottas.
Okay. I must admit, I mean, Haas are going to retire, aren't they? Double retirement.
Well, it depends because if Vettel's in for fourth and they need somebody to drop out, then they'll ask Haas to just get a problem.
They've got a secret radio frequency that we can't hear on the TV when the race is on. Anyway, thank you very much, Jack, for your time for the preview of the Bahrain Grand Prix. Remember, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. That is Let's Talk Sport for more of our pole position podcast throughout the F1 season. And make sure you like, comment, and share this video on all social media platforms. So from us, it's goodbye for now. See you later.